Now, the movement that followed this, we also saw that why architecture styles changed. Immediately after your Renaissance, we had this movement called as Mannerism in your timeline. So when you look at why architect, and if you see how each style has changed from Greek until now, it's either there is some material that is getting invented and the style has changed, or somebody is going to visually oppose it, be like, that is too boring a design, I'm going to come up with a better design. There would be an architect who does that, and that's what would change. If it is a success, then a lot of them get influenced by that architect's work, and then it becomes a norm everywhere. So similarly here, your mannerism was basically characterized by something which is termed as visual trickery, right? A famous mannerist architect was Michelangelo. Now, let's try and understand what this visual trickery is. It's basically, it challenges the Renaissance norms, right? If you saw the previous ones, all those columns that you saw were actually structural supporting elements, right? There is no visual trickery there. Whatever those columns are meant to do, they are doing it, right? They are meant to carry a load, and they're meant to, to express a certain load. So they do their task efficiently. Whether you saw the Greek abbreviated form or whether you saw, all of them did the same. But here, what you can see here, you can see there is a series of columns, and then you can see that there is this this whole thing of arch window that is coming there, but it is not carrying any load. It is done for a visual treatment, right? Here you can see there's a solid mass, and then there is a sudden subtraction or subtraction in the volume of the mass. So this was also this is exactly what visual trickery means, is that there are a lot of structural elements within this building that don't necessarily carry any sort of load. For example, you see this thing that is getting sketched here. This is an arch that is there, but if you see the entire scope of this particular building, this arch does not carry any load. There is no it's not a load-bearing structure. Generally, if you saw the Romans, they did their arches and they were carrying loads, but here it was done purely for an aesthetic purpose. So this is a movement that actually was responsible for the spread of the Manneristic trends into the Europe. It was actually north of the Alps where we saw this actually flourish. So during this movement, the architects experimented with architectural forms, basically to emphasize solid and spatial relationships. So here you can see this is the solid part of the building, and this is the spatial part of the building. So there is some bit of a relationship between the solid and the spatial part. So this was very in time, and this was very very much in respect to what and how Mannerist movement was. So of course, each period does receive its judgments and does receive its criticisms, but we're just trying to understand just the idea of how styles have changed, and just trying to understand so that when we go towards organic and pray, we go towards our topic, all of you are more can sync with how things have actually changed. So here again, here you can see the rows of columns. Now these are structural elements, and you can see this arch here. There is no need. I mean, the only need for this is that it is it is aesthetic purpose. So it's acting like an entry. So the next bit, what in terms of your timeline, if you see, is Baroque. This was the early 17th century. Now, of course, the Baroque began early 16th century itself. It took the Roman vocabulary of Renaissance architecture, and also it used it in a very new kind of a theatrical fashion. And often it expressed high forms of ornamentation. It was denoted as a somewhat, if you look at Baroque itself, originally it denoted an irregular, oddly shaped pearl, right? So that's what it actually meant. Uh, and that was the basic idea of Baroque. So here, if you see in this particular building that is getting sketched here, uh, you can notice some of the important um, features here. This is the St. Charles Church that is getting sketched. It was considered one of the most outstanding Baroque buildings or Baroque churches in Vienna. Now here, of course, it was very famous for its, for its dome and these twisted flanking columns that are there. So this is again, you can see here, there is a certain proportion and all that, but you can see the amount of ornamentation that is there in this particular Baroque structure. And again, it looks itself very heavy as a building, right? So this was actually very representative. Here you can see even the dome, the amount of ornamentation that's happening on the dome, is quite heavy, right? So if you look at a comparison between Renaissance or Baroque, you can see that Renaissance, it was very clear. There was very clear cut proportion to the form. But in Baroque, there is a certain ambiguity to the form. You can see here there is sudden recession, and then there is a somewhat looks like a triviated style, but then it looks like there is a dome, and then the dome is elevated up with a lot of. If you looked at the Renaissance dome, it was very proportionate and semicircular, but here you can see that there is a little bit of ambiguity in terms of its proportion, and in Renaissance it was very uniform, whereas there's a lot of variety in Baroque. You can see here this twisted flank column, and then there is this dome, then there's a series of columns. So there's a lot of variety when it comes to the design of that particular building. In Renaissance, we saw that there was a regular style, there was a lot of regularity, and of course here there is a lot of contrast, right? So very evident to see the contrast within this sketch. And if you see Baroque, there's a lot of mystery also attached with the particular building that is that is there in that period. So all this you can see how actually different how different people are trying to think a little differently, and people are with different inventions, and with time you can see how they're trying to fuse different inspirations from the past and improving their way of designing. The next movement, again the mid 18th century, you see is neoclassical. So of course this is derived from the classical antiquity, from Vitruvian principles. Works of Andrea Palladio is very important here. As the name suggests, neoclassical is bringing back or revival of the classical era. So another thing is, you can see we discussed as to why styles change. One is either there is new material technology, or either there is new somebody saying my style is better, or there is this where somebody is like, oh, we have lost this in our past, we need to bring this back, we need to revive this style. It has a lot of importance with respect to a certain aesthetic way, or the way the building appeared. So this is a revival style. So a lot of it got revived. Neoclassical, there was also Gothic revival, was all that you will study in your history, but it's important to understand how things have actually shaped with respect to the timeline. So the movement itself was with the logic of the entire classical volumes, unlike the classical revivalism. Right? So they used classical parts, and basically your classical architecture is characterized by grandeur of scale and simple geometric forms. So here you can see there's a simple geometric form, and it is getting classified by this simple geometric form. You can see that there are tall columns. The column is going from the base almost to the full height. Shape again being very symmetrical, and of course you have the triangular pediment and a dome. So you had a mix of both. So it was, it was a very basically getting back something from the past in a very different way. So, which is neo or new classical movement. A lot of a lot of actually interesting features of the neoclassical architecture of today's architects. Actually, even if you see today's architecture, a lot of them, actually fall under this revival style. So, anyways, so post this, we started to see the Industrial Revolution.